listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome. Good morning. You are listening to Second Wind with Joyce. I'm so glad that you're here today because, I promised you and I promised myself when I started this podcast 10 years ago that I would always bring you the best. And I've done it again. This amazing lady is going to light your fire today. I know she's going to open the windows and open the doors, and you're going to soar through those windows. So anyway, I don't want to talk anymore because you've heard me before, but let me tell you just a little bit about our guest. Her name is Gina Vincent. Gina was born in New York City in a blizzard. And I wondered why she said in a blizzard. We don't have those in Texas. But anyway, Gina's been a lifelong search for ideal combinations of sun, sand, and sea. Now, she studied fashion at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And then life has it that she moved with her fashion career, took her to South Carolina, where she met and married her love of her life, gave birth to her son, and adopted a daughter. It was here that her passion for yoga led her to teach it. Now, today, she lives in Orange County, California. She went all the way across the United States, and she has as she says, she's been in the school of life that has led her to her moment today. So welcome, Gina. It's delightful to have you here.
Thank you. Likewise, I'm very, very, excited, thrilled, and delighted. I appreciate it.
Well, it's been a pleasure to go to your website. I got so excited reading all of the things that you do and how you challenge your people that you work with into opening up and finding themselves. So I encourage, as always, I encourage my people to go to their websites because yours is very interesting. Compliments, my dear.
Thank you.
So anyway, tell us about what took you out of the fashion world into where you are here. I like to call that the defining moment.
Yes.
The one that changes our path. We think we're going to the left, and all of a sudden life throws a bunch at us and we have to go a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So would you share with us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And there's a little gap between, so I'll explain that. But I absolutely loved, even as a child, dressing up and wearing my mother's jewelry and her fancy shoes. And I love the fashion industry and how it allowed each and every person to, I would say, adorn themselves in a way that they can express their innermost desires outwardly and be unique by doing that, versus wearing a uniform. And so I loved what I did, but I will be honest with you, it was such a cutthroat industry and very depressing, almost smothering.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from New York, people told it the way it was, right? Very, very blunt. And I could handle that because that's the way I grew up and I understood it. If we wanted to have lunch, or I would say, Joyce, are you, I'll call you for lunch, and I'd mean it. Well, then when I went to North Carolina, it was a little different. And it was, I just felt like a fish out of water, and it became more and more intense, the difference between how I live my life, or how I choose, let's say that, how I choose to live my life and what's important, what I value, and what was going on around me. And I realized I was in a very toxic environment. It was like being in a toxic relationship, only it was with my career.
Yeah,
and right. I found myself sick to my stomach in the morning when I woke up, and at night when I went to bed, especially Sunday night through Thursday night. And that's not the person I am. I'm even in the darkest of times, I can see the beauty of something else unfolding, maybe I
Right.
should say,
Yeah.
right? That there's a lesson, there's a transformation in whatever this is. But in that career, I couldn't see anything. So I left it, and I worked in a bunch of other different things, never finding as much passion as I had in the fashion industry.
Right.
And when I met Mark, my husband, and we married and we had our son, I knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And he supported that wholeheartedly. And it was a lot of fun. But believe me, there were days I wish I could put on my red lipstick, my false eyelashes, my high heels, and go into an office and, collect a paycheck without,
Right.
wiping off
Baby
pretzel
birth.
glue.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But during that time, Mark became extremely ill. He was actually fighting for his life with kidney failure, but also liver failure that was not, I always have to be careful how I word things. So not maybe given as, it looked at it as well as it should have, let's say that. So they were really focusing on this polycystic kidney that was now in failure. And that happened on the heels of adopting Sonia. So Sonia came home from Guatemala at 6.5 months old.
Oh
And
my.
yeah, we were so excited, and just everything was perfect in my world. Like I had a lovely house that I got to decorate. So I think of like decorating your house just the way of like putting on a necklace, right? You like making it all yours. And this house became our home, and now we had our son and adopted our daughter, and everything was perfect. And that was October. And January, Mark went for an exam, and he knew he had polycystic kidney and liver. But we just assumed this would be a problem when he was in his 60s, like when it happened to his mom. Well, we were very wrong. And that January, so Sonia was 6.5 months old, he was told he's gonna be on dialysis soon and need a transplant. And so, like the man in this woman in the circus spinning the plates. I was like, oh, wait, hold on. How do I, now I have 2 more plates, a kidney plate, a liver plate. Well, then the dialysis unit plate, and so I was laughing at myself as well as crying. And through that experience, I mean, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it was 8.5 months long. He was supposed to receive my right kidney. Things went wrong in the first surgery. He now was in liver failure. The hospital was denying this. I call them the men in white because they were all men at that time there in Charlotte. And my intuition and my feisty New York Italian, I was going to say bitch, but my feistiness came out. And I just had to speak up, and I had to, like I was on fire, like a psychopath. Like, you need to look at this, you need to look at that. And they kept saying to me, is your wife a doctor? And he's like, no, my husband's a doctor. So they could care less about me. I should have been the quiet, quote unquote, with my hands folded, maybe on my lap, doctor's wife. And just praising everything they did. And my intuition said otherwise, like, this is happening, something is wrong, blah, blah, blah. And this went on for a bit, to the point where I said, you have to get a second opinion. And when he did, he ended up at Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville, Florida, which is like, for me, the Taj Mahal, the Ritz-Carlton, the, of hospitals. I mean, they're just so phenomenally run. And every appointment, Joyce, they would ask me, okay, Mark, thank you for that. Gina, what did you notice? What are you seeing? And I sat there the first time with tears in my eyes, and they're like, are you okay? I said, this is the first time I've been allowed to speak and be heard and invited to speak. And they looked at me and they said, well, you know what's going on better than him. He's sick. He doesn't know that he's not awake as many hours, that he's not parking the car as far away as he used to, that he's, agitated. He doesn't realize that he's fighting for his life. And through that experience, there was the turning point. So long answer short, The turning point was, I think it was a Tuesday morning. The sun was on my shoulders. I love the warmth. As you know, being born in a blizzard was tragic for me.
Is that what it was? Oh,
it was tragic. Warmth, water, it was floating around, swimming in mom's belly to woo, cold, shocking. But I had this, I was not allowed in this appointment at Mayo Clinic because it was like a scan of some sort and I couldn't be inside. And so I was in the waiting room and I picked the sunniest seat, and the sun was just, oh, so strong, even through the tinted windows. I could feel it on my neck. And I just felt like me for the first time in, I don't know, a year and a half.
yeah.
And I just sat there and I knew this whole time that something greater is going to come. And I kept telling myself something greater will come from this, something greater, whether it be Mark fully thriving and experience life in a different way, or me, you know. And so here I was teaching yoga for fun and pleasure, and it was lovely. I really enjoyed my students and so forth, but it was like, okay, I got it. I found my voice. I know what my truths are. I know what I desire, and I have these gifts that I have to explore a little more and figure out, what do I do with them? How do I earn an income? How do I, you know what I'm saying? Because before, as a department store buyer, you buy a shirt for $5 and you mark it up to $10 and you sell it and you mark it down after a few whatever weeks on the floor, and then you have your margin. And here it was like, well, how do I use my ability to, you know, tap into, like I say, my husband said, oh, that sounds a little ominous, but I hear things people can't hear, and I see things people don't normally see for themselves, right? It's always easier when we're on the outside, I think. I don't know if you would agree, but that was the moment that really was like, okay, I'm going to do this. It took me time, Joyce, because my kids were still very, very young, and Mark needed it probably another 9 months to actually be himself. It was a year of recovery for him. Some people, it's very fast. He ended up with a kidney and a liver transplant from a woman my age and my blood type. Wow. So to me, there was so much, even see, I'm getting goosebumps as I say it again. There was so many divine intervention moments, or that I could, like threads forming a quilt or a tapestry of some sort. You know, it was crazy. Don't get me wrong. I am kind of making it sound easier than it was. It was not easy.
We do that because when you tell the story, you can't put in the pain that you felt, you know, the frustration that you felt, you know, the balls you were juggling, the children at home, the doctors, the husband, I mean, yeah. And you're not a quiet woman. I can tell that. I read the information you sent me, and I could tell from that. So I can see that was a very, very, but out of that, it sounds like it awakened you to some of the possibilities that you have in you.
It kept awakening me over and like, I was going to say snowball, but again, I don't really like cold, but it like a tumbleweed, maybe. It kept rolling and getting bigger and bigger. And I think what I find with myself and working with women, usually women, some men, smart men, no,
yes,
that they, as you start getting deep within yourself, you realize there's even more and more goodness and more gifts. And I like to say, as we appreciate our gifts, instead of dismissing them and saying, oh, they're not of value, or the teacher said you're never going to be able to do whatever you were dreaming of, or an uncle or an aunt, parent, you know, or society says that's not the right thing. We dismiss those things, but I find when you appreciate your gifts and your talents and your obnoxious voice that, you know, likes to say, hey, over here, we need help. But when you appreciate them, they appreciate. I like to think of Celine Dion, Josh Groban. I like listening and trying to sing along with them. I think I sound good in the shower. But
you probably do in the shower.
But I don't think I'll take a microphone anytime soon to be singing. But I think of them like what it must have been like for them as a little kid, and then stepping out and being more courageous, and then eventually it becomes a career unfolds, or whatever that may be. And I like to say, in your world, because your world might be 5 children. I have only 2, and they can be a handful at times.
Right.
One child can be more than enough at times, right? So
yeah.
Was
in that time that you were going through all of the change, was it that you were seeing the unbelievable happen without any control from you?
Right.
Was that what was really eye-opening for you? Was that it's out there? If you just, do you ask for it? Did you ask for it? Did it come automatically? How was it? How'd you get it?
That is perfect, and I have goosebumps all over me. So it's exciting you should ask that. So it was September March 2nd, Mark had his kidneys removed. It's called a double nephrectomy because they were 16 pounds. And they needed space to put in the new my kidney that at that time. So 6 weeks later, after Easter, he was to get my kidney, but they deroofed a huge cyst the size of a baseball off his liver, and that sent him into liver failure. Well, when that happened, I was no longer able to be his donor. And so it wasn't until September that Mark was called into Mayo Clinic to see if they could even help him. So we had 2 weeks of living down there in Jacksonville, Florida, and going through all the appointments and tests and just seeing if he was a good fit for them, if they could help. And after that, I left him. We went home. They called him immediately and said, yes, we would love to transplant you with a kidney and a liver. You're a viable candidate, you need to be within 6 hours of the hospital. And so we were 6.5-ish. So he had a friend who's also a doctor, family doctor. They did their residency together, who was now newly divorced, and the daughter was living only there part of the time. So Frank invited him to live there. And on our 10-year wedding anniversary, that we all 4 of us drove him to Florida and left him there in hopes of him getting a transplant. And I drove home with the kids. And
could he take care of himself during that time?
Yeah, yes, he was still trying to work. He's a feisty man when it comes to work. It's very interesting to watch a man versus a woman, in my opinion, what I've noticed during times of, stress or health loss. Okay. Mm-hmm. And through the polycystic kidney, support group, I saw a lot of men and women, and men would always keep quiet, try not to tell anybody they were sick. If you know anything about the kidney, your skin turns gray. So you're vibrant. I can see the color in your cheeks, and you're glowing. But he did not have that. He was very dim gray. And then in liver, you usually turn somewhat yellow. So the jaundice around the eye, in the whites of the eyes and stuff. But he was fighting. And I think that maybe he was so toxic from not being able to urinate, because he had no kidneys. Now he's solely living on dialysis, that you become so toxic, you don't even know what's going on. Or maybe it's God, universal wisdom, you fill in the blank as far as the name, the divine taking over, so that you can fight another day and be there for that transplant. But when I was driving home, I was like, I cannot believe this is my 10-year anniversary. Looking in the review mirror with 2 kids in car seats, going, this is my life. Like, from your wedding day to this. Now I realize not every marriage goes as planned, but I was like, never in a million years did I think I was going to have two, kiddos sitting in the back seat and me driving home, like fighting back the tears. But I got home and we had plans to come back for Thanksgiving to visit him. And my sister was going to come in with her family also, so that we could make it somewhat normal, if you want to use that word. And it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving that I realized, see, I had a timeline. As a department store buyer, you often have these like, when do you want your delivery? So my delivery wish to the universe, as if I could manifest these things, my delivery wish was that I would like to be home with my husband, who is already transplanted, in time for Christmas with these two little guys. And it came on that Sunday that I realized, as I sat in prayer, that I was praying for someone to die so he could live.
Oh.
And I, like, even as I say that to you right now, it makes me cry, because it was such a horrible thing to wish, that someone was going to leave this planet and not be there for Christmas so that my husband could be with his two kids. And it was at that point that I had to start thinking. I have an hourglass on my desk that I like to use. It's a 1 minute, little tiny hourglass. And I like it because I think of down dog in yoga. And I always tell my students when I taught yoga that, like, when you're upside down, right, everything changes. Look around the room gently, not whirling your head, but just slowly turning your head. I mean, how funny everything looks when we flip upside down. And if you watch toddlers, they spend a lot of time upside down. Even school kids, the monkey bars or whatever they're called these days, all the different toys, they have nicer things than I had. But anyway, and I had to sit there and think of like my hourglass and say, okay, what is the worst that could happen? Here, initially, I was thinking, Joyce, that the worst would be him passing away.
Right.
And then I realized he would be free. He would be out of pain. He would be out of this toxicity of these two large organs. He would be in a better place. The kids and I would be devastated, and it would be a different life than what I had envisioned when we got engaged or when we got married. But I knew that we were young enough and healthy enough that we had enough support, friends, family, oh my gosh, students, the list goes on, that we would be able to survive. And then I thought the worst thing would be if he was like barely living, where he had to live in a home and he was hooked up to machines for the rest of his life and couldn't walk and couldn't maybe speak as eloquently as he speaks currently. And that's when I just said, okay, God, this is in your hands. I will, I surrender to whatever the heck you have in your plans. And I realized, if possible, please just, I ask that you keep him from what I thought was worst case scenario, which is being alive but not thriving. And that was Sunday. And sure enough, Wednesday night, that same week, I forgot my phone in the car. I was tired. I took the kids for Chinese food around the corner. And I was so tired, I forgot my phone. We ate Chinese food, with like toothpicks in my eyes. And came back and, the kids had school. That's why we hadn't left. And I went to the car and there was like phone call after phone call after phone call that I had missed. And I'm like, oh dear God, what's going on? And it was my husband saying, I got the call. They found a match. I'm on my way for surgery. They're going to test me first. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry, it was the Thursday before Thanksgiving. 1 o'clock in the morning, they started surgery, and it wasn't till 11 o'clock in the early afternoon that he finished. It was supposed to be 4 to 6 hours, but there was so much wrong inside from the first surgery that he lost a portion of his colon. They nicked his lung. I mean, it was just like, and it was a woman, and my brother said, oh, she was beautiful when she went into surgery. She looks like, stressed out now. I said, could you imagine being on your feet for 11 hours operating? And at 4 a.m. when I arrived, they said, we're calling to tell you we're not going to complete the surgery. And I said, no, this is his wife. Don't stop the surgery. She said, his heart's not cooperating. He's down to 38 beats a minute and we cannot finish. And I said to her, the nurse, I said, this is his wife. He has a problem with anesthesia. Every time he goes under anesthesia, his heart rate drops. But I'm telling you, please tell the surgeon, please, please, please. And I sat there and I just prayed continuously till 2.5 hours later, they called back and said, we're going to continue with the surgery. So that's why it was 11 hours long. They would just, but yeah, that was my defining moment where I just said, okay, it's in your hands and I will obey and follow through and try to be the best mother I can to these, precious little ones. And it was incredible that Sunday and then Wednesday night. So it was like, why didn't I do this sooner? I don't know, because I like to do it my way.
You're feisty and you're in control. Right?
But it was such an out of control experience. And it really was. So that was a great question, because nobody asks me that question, honestly. But you gave me goosebumps and I'm sorry to have gotten emotional, but it was definitely this overwhelming, uplifting, you are supported. We are supported here on this earth and we are blessed. And, it might not always go as we had hoped or were counting on or wished for. Yeah. But we really, in my opinion, have everything we need within us to, I was going to say survive, but even better than survive, thrive and live blissfully, I make my hand motions, but to expand.
Yes, you all can't see, but she's waving her hand. Because she and I can see Zoom. But I'm wondering, where did you choose your new direction? And how soon could you choose that with your husband, still healing, still right. Going through that? You have a new strength about you and support, and you've seen it work. So how long? I don't think you just stand still. I think you start moving. I'm just guessing. But how soon did you go into this direction that you were destined to do?
So I am a mover and a shaker. You are correct about that. So I'm very transparent, aren't I? I did have to go very slowly because I'll be honest with you, I wasn't healthy. I had gained about 35 pounds. I hadn't slept at that point in about 2 years. It was fabulous. People were making us casseroles, which was, I always thought, a casserole, big deal, or a meal, right? But what that meal meant was I didn't have to go to the grocery store. I didn't have to, first, I didn't have to make a grocery list. I'm a hungry person, so I never go without a list because then I would come home with things I don't need. And I didn't have to shop and I didn't have to unpack the groceries. I didn't have to cook and plan and, be somewhere to buy the oven. And so those of you who are thinking of a meal, it's more than just a meal for that person. But I had to first gather all the pieces of myself, honestly. And I talk about that when I work with people. I think that we sometimes give up pieces of ourselves to fit in. I never fit in. And as I got older, I tried not to fit in, but I think people pleasing. And then of course, when we're trying to keep someone alive or be a mom to young kids or both at the same time, we have to, like the day I was speaking about with the sun on my shoulders, I took out a piece of paper. I always had a notepad with me. And I just started writing, what do I miss? I miss exercising for myself, just taking classes for myself, my own practice. I miss dinner parties at my house. I miss healthy meals. I went out and bought myself a cute apron, new pots and pans, because when Mark was getting sicker and worse, right? He craved comfort food. And so I would want like vegetables and green and healthy things. And for him, nothing tasted right. He ended up with a metallic taste in his mouth that I think might be a side effect of the dialysis.
Yeah.
And so you end up wanting him to eat. So you just make like junk. And then the casseroles, of course, they weren't the freshest of vegetables because people didn't know if you were going to prepare that the same night, or is it going in the freezer, right? And so I'm not,
I don't really consider casseroles friends. They're not friends to your body.
Right.
And they're made quickly to hold in the kitchen. So,
correct.
in the fridge. So, yeah, it's not your diet food.
Right.
So no wonder you gained that weight. It was not your fault.
Yeah. Well, and I think also sometimes I think like I was protecting myself. Every pound that he lost in liver failure, I essentially gained. It was like as we slept in the same bed, it just shifted over. And then I couldn't wait to give it back to him.
Yeah.
And so I needed to first take time to like get myself together. I didn't look like myself. I didn't recognize myself. I didn't, as positive as a person I am, I didn't feel myself still.
Right.
So that took, well, for him, it took a year for him to finally feel alive. And I think it took me time after past that for me to start feeling right. And then I still had 2 young kids in the house. So each yoga class or each paddleboard yoga class or whatever I was teaching, I was finding myself, my intuition was hitting more. I would get a sense in a room. There were times I always prayed before teaching or being in front of a group, anybody, one person, sometimes for me is a group, right? And there were times where I would say things that I wasn't prepared to say. And then after class, somebody would run up to me. I needed to hear that. And so I knew that I had this gift where I feel like sometimes the divine can speak through me, uses me as a vessel, maybe. And it was becoming more and more exciting. And then it was about 2017, 16, 17 that I was really focusing on, okay, how am I doing my business? I first started a paddleboard business. I think that was 2015, Paddle to Paradise, which was my passion. But you know what? You can't paddle very long in North Carolina because the season is rather short. So great business, great theory, but wrong place. And so Blissed Out Fit and Feisty, which is my parent company still, started in 2017. And then Exquisitely Aligned is brand new. It's the new place where I'm teaching from. Blissed Out Fit and Feisty is still the deck of cards and opening possibilities cards and getting people in a simpler way, getting in touch with people so they can get in touch with themselves.
Right. Yeah. So you've always been in transition. So you refined your teaching. Let's say it that way. Now,
absolutely.
So it's more direct when you
Correct.
take a person that you're working with them. How do you start with them? A woman that's in transition that comes and says, I don't like me. I want to be somebody else, or nothing's going right. My world's falling apart. How do you start with them?
So for me, I always believe, so I do gifts, truths, and desires. That's my program, because that's what I discovered for myself works. And people can fill in different words. I know, I think in your book you use the word values, and I see them, they're intertwined in my opinion, different way of explaining things, but definitely when I was reading, I was like, yes, Joyce, you and I are, I think we see things similarly,
Yeah.
And for me, I always start with gifts, your innate gifts. I believe that like I said, I gave up pieces of myself during that time when Mark was ill, and other times in my life. But I think that when we're young and we go to school, our system, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, I think it's a little bit broken. I don't like to be negative, but I think there's places where it can improve. And I think in our society, we focus so much on our weaknesses instead of our gifts. Like, I love math. I adore math. I always loved it. But how many kids in the classroom with me disliked math, and it was not for them? So
Right.
why not, I mean, simple things like addition so they can pay their bills and stuff like that. But beyond that, why not let them study something that they're good at and allow it to, like we said, appreciate earlier, And I think that a lot of women have struggle because they've given up those, or not seen the beauty in their own gifts.
Right.
And those gifts are I always tell my kids, you're as unique as your fingerprint. Nobody else has what you have. Those gifts are only yours, and they can only be expressed in the way you have them, because you are you. And I think a lot of times when you start showing a woman her gifts, or revealing, not showing, but helping her reconnect and reveal, and I use a few different formats to get there, they start going, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I didn't know that's valuable. And you're like, yes, you know what I mean? It might not be that you're, I remember when I was doing something with a girlfriend, a dear friend, Michelle, she's like, yeah, you're a connector, Gina. You speak with everyone. I said, yeah, so do you. She goes, no, I don't. She goes, everywhere we go, you're the person who introduces us. Hey, I just met Joyce in the ladies' room. Hey, come here, Michelle, Joyce, Michelle. Guess what? You two grew up in the same village, or you know what I mean? Like, she goes, I'm not doing that. I'm just along for the ride. And I said, do I really? I think the things that come so naturally to us, we don't appreciate.
Right.
We don't realize that they are, I would say, divinely given to us to use and make other people come alive. Like Michelle, she said, do you remember we went to yoga together? We both taught, but at this point we were taking a class of a female friend teacher. And she said, I went to the bathroom, Gina, which is the next door right to the yoga studio. She goes, by the time I went to the bathroom, which nobody was in, so I wasn't in line, and came back, you introduced me to 3 new people. You figured out that the one woman, her husband, and your husband did Boy Scouts leadership together. You also figured out that this one knew that one, and that you were introducing me to everybody, and you had a connection for me there. Right. And she said, not many people do that. And I thought to myself, that's it. It's interesting. So I think we oftentimes are focusing on our shortcomings, which in my opinion, that's not what we're supposed to focus on,
Well, a common response, I can hear response from a teacher, a mother, maybe a friend, to that woman when she's doing her genius. I like to call that genius. That, oh, you don't want to do that. That's not polite. Don't do that. Don't talk to strangers, because they can hurt you. Right. They can really hurt you. They'll kidnap you and take you away. And we get those and they scare the daylights out of us.
Yes.
And so we pull back so that we're not put into those situations.
Mm.
So it's real easy to see how we get those ideas that pull us back from doing our genius.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful quality, but at the same time, you have to be a little aware of some of and I'm sure you are. You're not walking out on the street and trying to chum up with somebody that looks different and strange and threatening. So there's so much that goes into an experience like that.
Mhm.
But I find, well, you mentioned my book. The values that I used was for me such a big, big, important explanation for a woman to go through.
Mhm.
Because all of a sudden they could turn what they had thought was a negative into a positive. And
Mhm.
it's part of me. And it means I've got good values, I've got good qualities. Or they could understand why they didn't like that person and understand how it happened.
Mhm.
So thank you for mentioning that. But there are so many different ways for us to really support who we are and find out who we are. Now, tell me one of the things that you do in that creation mode to help your client step forward. I'm picking the first one here. You have the 3 keys to life.
Yeah.
Would you share what those are? Just
Yes.
briefly. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
go into it.
So it's our soul level truths, the ones that only you know, only you can know. No one else would be able to figure them out. Maybe me with talking, I can bring them out. Your heartfelt desires, which I believe are the ones that make your heart beat faster.
Mhm.
And they make you come alive from the inside. I always think of a flame glowing in your heart, and then it lights through your eyes, maybe your skin, that gives you your glow. And of course, we've spoken about your innate gifts, those gifts that they're like your fingerprint. Only you have them, and only you can use them in a way that brings others also joy. You know what I'm saying? Like being able to sing, or me connecting a bunch of would-be strangers to making them new friends. Because you're right, those fears, my kids always say to me, why do strangers tell you like TMI, mom, too much information? They tell you like wild things like within the first meeting. And I say, I think we all want to connect. I
Mhm.
think we as humans crave connection. I know 2020 for me was definitely more gray hair, but it was
Mhm.
so sad and exhausting because of the lack of connection. And you mentioned Zoom earlier, and I love Zoom too, because it was my way of being able to connect and see your face and your eyes, and and come alive again. And I think that when you take those 3, like you were talking about values and their importance, when you take your truths, your desires, and your gifts, and you bring them all together, that's when you become exquisitely aligned, in my opinion.
Mhm.
That's when those outside forces like societal norms and fitting in or toning it down. What did you say before? Be careful, strangers, you know what I mean? Like all of those, I don't know what you want to call them, but those beliefs that are, I think, should be, blown up, as I use my hands, pushed away. We
Right.
all have to go through life, and I think we have great intuition as to where we are safe and where we are not safe. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think we played, like I did, maybe a little too safe until Mark was really croaking. Then it was like, okay, this is what I see. Well, how do you see that? You need to get blood work. And I told them, you need to test this. Why are you like, why did you run blood work? No, because my intuition says, right? But as you come to that, then your intuition, I believe, sharpens your inspiring soul. Like, no longer do you have to look outside for inspiration. It comes from within. You wake up with these wonderful ideas, or you're sipping your tea or coffee or your big glass of water. And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I should do that, you know, and I write lists. So I have lists of million wishes. And I also believe when you bring those three together, the other thing is your body begins to heal itself.
Mhm.
So those stressors that we had through life or currently, your body can just find its way and not allow them within. I think of them as being outside, and then we bring them in and we find dis-ease, like Louise Hay would say, discomfort and unhealthy. But when you're exquisitely aligned, I believe that you become what you see missing. I look out my window, but what you see missing outside in the world. And when you become that, like you already have, because I know enough about you in a short period of time that I know you've become that, then you're changing all those other people's lives that you work with and speak to. And for me, that's where we all have our responsibility or calling, maybe,
Mhm.
um, to
Mhm.
to be ourselves.
Yeah, I think we all have that need to know ourselves. And I never fully know myself. I'm in transition. Every day I get to know myself a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it's not a get there, done that.
Mm-mm.
It's a growth thing.
Mhm.
And so, it's wonderful that you get to walk on this growth with these ladies.
Yes.
I really want to encourage people because we're coming to the close
Mhm.
of our show today, but I really want you to tell them how they can get in touch with you through your website and all of that. If you'd share those with them right now.
Absolutely. And thank you, Joyce. I love connecting with people, as you know. So either come to my website, which is exquisitelyaligned.com, or I like personal emails. You can email me at gina@exquisitelyaligned.com. And today, Joyce, I'd love to offer a meditation if they want to experience that. On my website, go to exquisitelyaligned.com/meditation. And if you go there, put in your email address, it'll start playing. So you can watch the video. It is a guided visualization meditation to give you a glimpse into what I believe is possible for you. And I think it's about 20 minutes long.
With the first video that you had, is that the only video you have on your website?
On my website, great
You
question.
talking?
So I do have thank you, Joyce. I do have a YouTube channel. It's exquisitely aligned. Everything is exquisitely aligned. My son said, that's not how you do it, Mom. Well, he's 20, I'm 53. For the mom of 53, who's not as technically advanced as he, that's how I did it. So I do have a YouTube channel and I started a podcast.
Oh, good.
I am the baby in podcasting. So I'm in my second, getting ready to close my second season. And as you probably already figured it out, it's called Exquisitely Aligned with Gina Vincent.
Oh, and exquisitely is a capital E and aligned is a capital A.
Yes.
So, sometimes I put in things and I put in things and I put in things and I get this error.
Yeah,
But
thank you for saying that because I didn't even realize it was case sensitive. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a Facebook as well.
Correct. And
Facebook.com.
correct. So on Facebook, you can go to Gina Meyer Vincent. Meyer is my maiden name, so Maier. And then I have a business Facebook fan page, I guess they're called, which is Exquisitely Aligned. And Instagram is the same. So Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast for that matter.
Right.
And yeah, that's everything, I think. So,
Okay.
and I'd love to connect. Yeah,
I have one last question for you.
absolutely.
If I may ask you, please. What has been the most important part of Oh, that one's so big. Of your journey to today.
Okay, what has been, well, for me, it's,
That's a
you're
big
making me
one.
cry. I feel like I'm with, was it Barbara Walters who always had her people crying? Very emotional today. For me, I feel like this is my destiny. This is my calling. That my dad and mom are here this week for Thanksgiving, celebrating with us from the East Coast. And I overheard him say to my husband, "Oh yeah, everything happens to Gina, you know?" And I used to get upset when he said that. But now, Joyce, I realize that crazy things happen to me because I am to teach from them. I'm called to share that life is not always peaches and cream, and that even though it's not, if we, I'm raising my hands, but if we give it up and we free ourselves from being in control, right, that we talked about earlier on that Sunday and Wednesday night, there is Mark getting that phone call, you're getting organs. It happens like in Amazon Prime shipping, right? Overnight free delivery. And I feel like when I live my destiny or my calling, I can fulfill my legacy. And that has always been, even when I was a little kid, I felt like there was something huge I had to do. And I'm guessing you felt the same way. Would you say yes? Yeah.
Yes.
And it's nice that now that I'm 53, I'm finally getting to do it. I think my mother for years thought, what is this girl doing? She works here, she does this, she does that. But it was like everything that I've ever done now plays into my business and what I can share with people and my calling. And that is really, I don't know, it fills my cup to the fact that it's overflowing,
Thank you. Thank you very much,
You're
Gina.
welcome.
Great. Beautifully said. I'm going to say goodbye to my guests, and I want you to stay on. We'll exchange a few words afterwards. But all right, dear ones, I want you to, I always ask you to do something at the end of the podcast, but this is really, I feel, an opportunity for you to reach out to someone. Maybe that's you. Maybe you need to reach out. Go take advantage of Gina's website. Go there, see what she offers, see what's possible. And if you feel a twinge, a maybe, a little something in your tummy, then just give her a call and talk it over with her. Ask her about these. She's heard questions before, and I'm sure she could give you support in helping you transition through this. So if it's not you, which I think that is the biggest thing we have to face, is loving ourselves enough to take a step for ourselves. And that's what I'm asking you to do. So please, this week, while you're doing whatever you're doing after the week of Easter, that you kind of think about, am I loving myself enough? Am I taking myself to my genius? Yes, and I use that word that makes everybody shake. Genius is too big for me. No, you are a genius. And I want you to grow into that. So please take time for yourself. I love that you are here. And I look forward to please be with us next week as I continue giving you the best of those people that have messages to be told, like Gina. So thank you for being here. Have a great week. It's fabulous that you are here today. Bye.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.